Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of ProPuckers, part of live streaming on the Tundra New Enthusiast News Network. I'm Mike Fink. I write about the NHL for the Hockey Writers and the Tundra News Enthusiast News Network, and I'm joined this time by Emma Lingan, who covers the Nashville Predators for the Hockey News, covers the NHL at large for Heavy on NHL, and hosts a few podcasts, or is a contributor on a few podcasts, including The Gold Standard and Locked On Predators. So, Emma, first off, thanks for joining. And how are you doing? And the last thing, an icebreaker that I like asking everyone is, what age did you realize you're more likely to be making a living covering sports, writing about it, than actually playing it?
Well, yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited for the Western Conference Final to get started tonight. But let's see, as soon as, I don't know, what's the earliest possible age? That would probably be the answer for me. My parents had me trying every sport, when I was little. They're like, find your thing, and I had no thing. I mean, my thing ended up being dance. I was actually a decent dancer. So I did that for about 15 years, but I loved sports. I just was really, really bad at playing them. I think my biggest issue was being aggressive. Like I played basketball. I think I played basketball for 3 years, and in 3 years I fouled someone one time. I didn't ever want to hurt anyone or touch anyone. So that would probably be, like I said, it wouldn't get me very far in competitive sports.
Yeah, maybe hockey would work out better, but that's a different story. I think that's the earliest age I've gotten so far, is as soon as you figured out with sports wise, we all have that moment. That's why I guess we're all covering it. But anyway, enough of that. Yeah. But the big thing we're here to talk about is Western Conference Finals. It starts tonight at 8:00 Eastern, 8:30 Eastern is the puck drop, which probably means 8:45, because of all the before pregame national anthems and stuff. But 5:45 Pacific time. Great series. Really excited. Oilers, Stars are the number 1 overall seed in the Western Conference. And the thing I first look at, and this is there's a lot to dive into with these teams, a lot of angles to approach, a lot of storylines. Some players this might be their best chance to win the cup, might be their last one. And the first thing, though, I want to look at is some of the key matchups. And I have a few that I think will decide this series, but I want to hear what's the first thing you think about that will decide this series between these two teams.
Well, I think overall, if you're looking at each lineup, I think Dallas has the deeper lineup. They're just deeper at every position. Really, you look at the top 2 lines, for Dallas, it would be Robertson, Johnston, Stankoven against Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, Hyman. Okay, that matches up pretty well. Second line, you got Marchment, Duchesne, Pavelski against Holloway, Draisaitl, and Kane. Again, okay. But it's really once you get to the third line, the third forward line for each team, and you just start to see that Dallas has really got a lot more depth than Edmonton does. I mean, you've got Ben, Sagan, and Dodonov as your third line in Dallas against Fogle, McLeod, and Ryan. I mean, that is a pretty steep mismatch there. And then Foxa, Steele, and Smith against Janmark, Carrick, and Brown. And that, saying that Dallas has all that depth, that's with no Roope Hintz, who is still supposed to be out for game 1. So I think it's just overall that bottom 6 is a big difference for the two teams. I would also say on special teams, though, Edmonton, I would say that 5-on-5, Dallas has the advantage for sure with the depth of their forward group. But then on special teams, you got to give Edmonton the advantage because they have the number 1 power play in the playoffs right now. Dallas has the 11th penalty kill. I think it's not great. So if Dallas can stay out of the penalty box, that would be good for them. But I would say those are kind of the 2 big things I look at.
It's almost like if we play a 5-on-5 series we're going to be fine, which I think is what the Hurricanes said when they played the Rangers. If we played 5-on-5 hockey the entire time, we'd win this series. But special teams will make that big of a difference. I like the depth. The classic depth stat everyone's been talking about is the Dallas Stars have 8 20-goal scorers this season, which is just like wild. You look that up on Hockey Reference, the site that's been saving hockey writers for years, and it's like 8 20-goal scorers. Yeah, they have just a deep lineup where anyone can beat you. Where they have like, I mean, Jason Robertson, obviously, if people think of him, people are starting to not notice Wyatt Johnston, but it could come from so many places and so many anyone in the lineup can all of a sudden like catch fire. And in this type of series, that's like really what's going to make the difference for the Stars. It's like the biggest advantage for them. It looks like, right?
Yeah, like I said, that depth. I think that Dallas is, would be a great example if they were to go all the way, because there's this ongoing argument, and maybe it's an argument I hear more often because I cover the Predators, but an ongoing argument that, you can't win a Stanley Cup unless you have like a top 5 draft pick or something. You need to be able to pick at the top of the draft, which would mean theoretically you have to be really bad for a year or two and then, be able to pick at the top of the draft order and then go from there. And Dallas really hasn't done that. Like Dallas has not had to go through like a full tear down where they've just been terrible for, like I just think they've been pretty consistent. And so I think that they're a good example of, like you can still have a deep team. Their team really is not built around one or two guys. Like you said, 8 different 20-goal scorers. I mean, that's incredible, I think. But then obviously you look at Edmonton and they've got the great equalizer in Connor McDavid, and he has not really been himself these playoffs. There's been a lot of conversation that he might be banged up. He looks a little banged up. And I mean, whatever it is, looks to be an upper body issue because his skating looks just fine. But
Yeah,
I think
he's still got that burst of speed, I think.
Yeah, he's still got the speed. He can fly into the zone and create entries and dish the puck the way that he does so well. But if I think that, with everything we just said, with Dallas having more depth than Edmonton does, just at every position, for Edmonton to have a chance, you need Connor McDavid to be Connor McDavid. And I think if they can get him going again, I don't know what exactly he's dealing with. I'm sure we will find out after the playoffs, but
it's always after the playoffs you find out, oh yeah, they had a lacerated kidney, 3 broken ribs, and they need surgery on their shoulder.
A mangled finger or something. Yeah. So it's like, well, I'm sure it'll be something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that they need him to be himself. Obviously, I mean, Draisaitl's been great for them, and he's a guy that I think that they I'm glad for Edmonton's sake. I think, again, going back to the depth conversation, I think it makes them a better team when they split McDavid and Draisaitl, and don't put them on the same line. So, and they've been doing that for the last few games. I imagine they'll do that again in game 1 against Dallas. So I think that will help. But again, I think it's not going to be an easy series, like again, 5-on-5, it's all Dallas, but power play.
It is though interesting because I have been thinking about it that this year's Oilers team is the deepest Oilers team I think I've seen in a while. I think we've seen in a while, because they do have they are the top heavy team. I think the Stars versus the Avalanche series is the true testament of, can you win with a top heavy lineup or do you need depth? And with the Avalanche, the story is they have genuinely a bad roster, but it doesn't matter because they have 4 of the top 20 players in the NHL, 2 of the top 5 with McKinnon and Makar. But it's interesting with the Oilers because they are always known as a top heavy roster, and I think this year's team, it is deeper, but even so, just compared to the Stars, it isn't comparable. I will say one advantage, and you talk about like scoring and all that. There's a stat that I find interesting that I think could sway the Oilers' way, is that you look at the Stars' defense, which is a great defensive unit, and obviously they wouldn't be here without just all 6 skaters stepping up. Mira Heiskanen leads the team pretty much he leads them in points with 5 goals and 8 assists. He also leads the defense. The rest of the defense has combined 2 goals and I think it's 6 assists. It's 7 assists. They have 2 goals, 7 assists. So the rest of the defensive unit's not helping out from the point. The Oilers have a defensive unit that is doing it. Evan Bouchard is just tearing it up from the blue line. He just looks like a force in the offensive zone. But aside from him, they have the skaters who are able to create offense. And I think that is something that if I'm the Stars, I would be concerned about. I would worry about. And I do wonder like what is like how important it is to get those other skaters to start stepping up at the blue line, helping out the offense, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think in Edmonton's case, I mean, if you're looking at purely defensive defensemen, then I think Dallas might have the edge there. But I think that with the Oilers, it's almost that whole like argument of the best defense is good offense, right? Like if they can get those guys going, I mean, like you mentioned Bouchard, if you can get I think Darnell Nurse, if he gets going, then he could be an X factor in this series. I think he's fast and he's big, but and defensively too, if he can box out the guys like Wyatt Johnston, Logan Sangman, those are not big guys. So like if he can keep those guys away from the net, then like that could be big too. So I don't know. I will say on the back end in Dallas, I think Chris Tanev was a fantastic ad for them. Great pickup at the deadline. Not as a scoring threat like you were saying, but I just think that he has been a great defensive ad for them. Looking at goaltending too, I think we can all probably agree Dallas has the edge there. You got Ottinger and then Scott Wedgwood as your backup, and then the Oilers have been struggling. So
it's really Ottinger versus like, well, who we're going with this time?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It is interesting because I think the Oilers, that actually is one of the things that I'm watching out for with the Oilers, because you look at goaltending and it's Stuart Skinner, Calvin Pickard, I don't know, take your pick kind of thing. The Oilers last series, and I think the Canucks kind of did a similar, where like, we're just going to make sure you do not get shots on net. And they played a very like tight defense in a sense, like they play that the slot area, they crowd the net. They're like, shoot from the outside. And like the Canucks did not want to shoot from did not want to take those ugly shots. So they were like, all right, we'll just hold on and wait until something happened. They'd have like 10 shots through 2 periods, or they averaged 21.2 shots per game in the series, which is real low. Like you think about how many games they had like 15 shots on net, or 10 shots, like not 10, but like 15, 16 shots on net in a game. And you're not going to win when you don't put the puck on net. Simple as that. And the Oilers, I would say, if they're facing the Stars in the series, that their defense is just going to be like, we're going to crowd the net. We're going to dare the Stars to shoot from the outside, which I think leads to what's interesting about the Stars is that they have great puck movement. They have the ability to get those shooters, really, whether it's Wyatt Johnston or Joe Pavelski or Matt Duchene, just get them open shots. And I think like it's almost like that's going to be a chess match where it's like, what point do the Oilers say? Do the Oilers control that pace, or do they control their play in the defensive zone, or will the Stars actually break the dam where they start getting those shots, start opening up the offense, and really break Stuart Skinner or Calvin Pickard because of that, because they're just getting these open looks on net. I think that is almost like an interesting like chess match within this series that's going to decide things, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that the Oilers, like I said, do have guys. I mentioned Darnell Nurse, but they've got Matthias Ekholm back there as well, who, again, I covered for a season in Nashville.
He's like last year's Chris Tanev. Like he's that solid trade deadline addition. You're like, nobody's like, oh wow, this is gonna put them over the top. But like, no, it's a nice add to the back end of the second, third pair of defense, and he's just shored up the defense. And same with Chris. Yeah, same thing. He's just sound defensively. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, both those guys filled a gaping hole on each team's roster, just in terms of, what they needed to really kind of put them into that conversation. So I think, yeah, those guys are definitely capable of it. One thing I'm just thinking, you're talking about the chess match between
Yeah.
these two teams, and all the different factors there. One thing for me, I'm imagining this being a very like tough, gritty, hard series. I mean, it's playoff hockey, right? But I
Yeah.
think it just, with that in mind, you're trying for either team, if you're trying to give yourself the edge or give yourself the advantage over the other team, one thing I would consider, if I'm Edmonton, I would consider getting Corey Perry back in the lineup. I think that
Mhm.
he would be a really good agitator. He can get under, I mean, that's what he's known for. He can get under the skin. And, if you're talking about Dallas getting those open shot lanes and being able to create those opportunities, even as a forward, I think Corey Perry would be a guy who can kind of disrupt momentum that way a
Yeah.
lot. And so I would think that, again, if I'm Edmonton, that might be a move that I would consider. Maybe you take out McLeod on the third line,
Yeah.
or
Loud.
Carrick, maybe. I don't know. I think that there's an
It's like the
opportunity
third
there.
line
Like,
parts is interchangeable, where you're like, maybe
yeah.
Adam Henrique, and like, you just like,
Yeah.
if he comes back, you're
Well,
like, all right.
and that's another one. That's another one with Henrique has been injured.
Yeah.
And he is by no means an offensive powerhouse. Let me just be
Yeah.
clear. But I
Not at
think
this
that
age.
if I do think if you can get him back in the lineup, though, that he is like, he's been in the league a long time. He's a veteran, and he was playing very well on that top line with McDavid before he got hurt. And again, I don't know how close he is to being back. I think they have him listed as day to day, but I think it's a high ankle sprain, which does not sound like a day to day injury to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not a doctor, so
I think like it's almost like with all these injuries in the playoffs, especially the ones that are day to day, you're like, all right, we could either have you back at 80% version of fill in the blank player, or just not at all. Which in Henrique's case, you're like, I don't want an 80% Henrique. McDavid, you're like, I'll take an 80% McDavid over
sure,
whatever's the next best option, like him not
sure.
playing. So I think with Henrique, but like 80% Henrique, you're like, yeah, well, okay, we don't need to bother with that almost.
Yeah,
But
I just think Henrique would be a guy, like, again, if you have McDavid still at full
mhm,
speed, but maybe not at top scoring capacity, then Henrique is a guy that you could have like in the zone, and McDavid can dish to him and he can get
yeah,
to the net. And like, I think that could help them. Again, I don't think Henrique is by any means the X factor for the Oilers if he gets in the lineup. But I think, again, margins here are razor thin, and you're just looking for whatever advantage you can get. So, I mean, again, I don't know if like you said, I don't know if I want an 80% Henrique, but I'll take an 80% McDavid, because 80% McDavid is still better than the
yeah.
majority of the NHL. So,
Yeah, it's like that's like a conversation. It's interesting you mentioned that it's going to be a physical series, because I actually thought that when you first said that, I'm like, oh, of course not. The Oilers are a fast-paced team that loves winning with speed, and the Stars are an offensive team. And then I would just watch the Oilers Canucks series, where game 1, game 2, 5-4, 6-5 type of games, and then as the series progressed, the games got defensive-minded, low scoring, basically like slowed down. And I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if game 1 tonight is like a 7-6 barn burner, and then like after that we see defense, because like it does feel like that's kind of what this playoff hockey has become. And I think if there's one other key, one other big matchup, is that the Oilers can adapt to that type of series. And what I mean by that is, we love talking about McDavid being the best in the world, and he is. He's incredible. Can he win a defensive minded series? As in, if he knows that it's becoming a defensive series, a low scoring series, can he maintain possession? Can he step up in the middle of the ice as the defensive skater? And almost like if he does that, we're like, oh wow, he's not only the best in the world, but he's doing it in a way that like, oh, understands the series and is winning the series in the appropriate manner for the Oilers, which I
yeah. Yeah, because I think if you look at that series, the Edmonton Vancouver series, Edmonton did not win that series because of Connor McDavid.
yeah,
So I
he didn't.
think that it's a good point that you bring up, and Dallas is an incredibly different team than Vancouver is. I mean, I think, again, with myself covering the Predators for a while down the stretch at the end of the season, it was looking like the Preds were going to get either Vancouver or Dallas in the first round. And it was like, wow, you could not pick two more different matchups to have. And I mean, Vancouver did win that defensive battle. I mean, they won
Yeah.
the special teams battle too, but against Nashville, they won that defensive battle. It was those low scoring, like 1-goal games, really low event, low shot volume. And again, and their defense is just huge. Vancouver's is. So, I mean, it's like, good luck getting anything past those guys. But I think Edmonton as a team was able to adapt to that style. And be able to, muscle one out. And again, it wasn't easy. It took them 7 games, but this is another series that I think it'll go long. I think it'll go the distance. I don't know, 6 or 7, but if it goes to 7, it's got to be Dallas because Pete DeBoer does not lose in 7. So
the Oilers if the Oilers are going to win, they have to win in 6, I guess. That's
yeah,
the only rule.
Yeah, that's it.
How it works. But actually, I guess let's kind of shift gears a bit. That's one of the first question I'll ask you is we like talking about depth players. Everyone likes talking about the players that the X factors that'll step up and take over the series. And frankly, I don't want to squint and look at, say, like Sam Carrick or Adam Henrique's going to take over the series. I don't want to forecast. I'm curious what I'll say elite players because star players was too confusing with this series because it's the Stars and the Oilers. So which elite player is going to take over the series? You could pick one for each team that is going to win the series for them. I talked about McDavid defensively, so he's my first pick in the sense like if he wins the game defensively, that he would be the series MVP. But I'll hear what picks you have. Which two do you have for one for each team if you have one for each team?
That's a good one. I think that, yeah, McDavid's an obvious one. I'd maybe put like Zach Hyman in there too. I think that obviously he's had a career year in scoring, but if he can win that defensive battle as well, I think that would be big. On Dallas, I mean, I don't know. I think I'm just looking.
There's one player everyone's been saying, so like you could be the person that goes like picks like all the hockey hipsters knew how good he was, but now everyone's starting to realize. So
yeah, like I don't know. I'm not gonna say like Craig Smith is the key to this series, but I think like I don't know. I kind of flip flop. I go back and forth, but like I really like Jason Robertson, and I think I know that's the easy one, but like I think if he can really get it going, I think like people are just now starting to realize how good he is again, like I cover Nashville, so I've been seeing Jason Robertson for a while and have known that. I think if he can get going, Wyatt Johnston's another one that, obviously he's like.
I thought you were going to say Wyatt Johnston, by the way, because he's this year's Jason Robertson, which is like
exactly
the player on ESPN when they're broadcasting the games or TNT. They're like, did you know that Jason Robertson's good? And all the hockey hipsters are like, yeah, we've been watching him all year long.
Yeah,
it's like I call Jason Robertson the Sebastian Aho of the West.
Conference.
There's like these players that's like when you watch hockey all the time, you realize how good they are.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden people are like, oh yeah, no, he's really good. And it's like, yeah, we know this already.
No, yeah, because that's a good point because Jason Robertson was that guy last year. And I'm like, why are we all now just collectively realizing this? But I think Robertson, again, because he was that guy for me last year, I don't know. I don't like to place too many expectations on like the younger, less experienced guys because you just don't know. And like, yes, we've seen these flashes of greatness from Wyatt Johnston, and I think he is going to be a great player. I mean, he is a great player, but I think he's only going to continue to kind of build his legacy. But he is very like kind of hot and cold. I mean, we've already seen it in the playoffs too. And plus, obviously coming into this, doing all of their pre-scouting, Edmonton knows what kind of player he is, and they're going to try to shut him down. Not that they're not going to try with Robertson. I just think Robertson has a little bit more experience. He's got more size. I think that he could, maybe kind of break through in a way that Johnston might not. But yeah, those are probably the two for me that I think could do it. But I really just, my gut tells me Robertson. Robertson's the guy that really could make this series for Dallas.
What's so funny is like I thought you were gonna say Wyatt Johnston, and I was convinced like don't pick Wyatt Johnston because everyone this year is gonna pick Wyatt Johnston, and I picked Jason Robertson. I wrote him down as my other X factor. I'm like, the other star that's gonna take over the series because like Jason Robertson, people were talking about he's not scoring, he's not creating offense. He has 9 assists in the playoffs. What makes him great is he finds a way to win. He'll find the bet. If they're not giving him the open shots, he's going to create offense. He's going to find the open skaters in the offensive zone. And if he's got those open looks, which I think in this series, if the Oilers are playing Johnston or they rather Jason Robertson beat them, he will beat them. And this is a series where he could score a few goals and all of a sudden like he's the MVP of
I think with
the series.
Yeah, with Robertson too. I mean, he's just one of those guys that every time he's on the ice, something's happening. Like something is going to happen. Like even if he's not scoring, like you said, he's making plays. He's he's physical and he's big and he's fast and he just like he's the guy that you kind of every time he comes on in a shift change, you kind of sit forward in your seat and you're like, okay, what's gonna happen? So that's why he's the one for me.
Every team had. I mean, not every team has it. I always think about every team has that one defenseman who always is where the puck is, but that's just like a different story, I think. So I guess we're kind of running low on time. So real quickly, series winner, who wins and why? And if you want to pick games, you didn't pick games earlier, but if you want to, but who wins the series and why?
I'm going to go Dallas, and it's going to be the depth. I think the depth that they have with scoring, I think, is really going to make the difference. That said, they do need to stay out of the penalty box in order for that to mean anything, because again, we saw that with Carolina, didn't work out too well for them. So, I'm going to go Dallas. Again, if it goes to 7 games, it is just predetermined. It has to be Dallas because Pete DeBoer does not lose in Game 7. I
think like 7-0 or 8-0 in games. Yeah, it's like it's wild. Like
he literally doesn't lose. So I think I would maybe go Dallas in 6. I think that might be my prediction.
So I'm gonna actually go with Stars in 7, and not because of the Pete DeBoer thing, which is funny, like this 7 game series thing, which like what's interesting about Pete DeBoer is he's never won a cup, which is as a coach, and he's been around for a while, and he has this effect where like he makes a team instantly competitive, brings them close to the cup. He brought the Devils to the Cup Final, he brought the Sharks to the Cup Final, Vegas to the Western Conference Final, or was the semifinal because there was no Western Conference that year. He always makes teams better, but he's never won a cup, and this could be his year. I'll pick them in 7. I think the big thing, aside from the depth, which even though the Oilers do have depth, it's goaltending. If I want to bet against anything, the last podcast we recorded, I said I'll bet against Stuart Skinner in Game 7. He put together a decent game, good enough to help the Oilers advance. But if I'm betting,
made it interesting at the end though of that game against Vancouver.
Yeah. It ended up being closer than I think the Oilers were hoping for. So if there's anything I'll bet against here, or really if this case I could bet on Jake Ottinger, and I'll bet on Jake Ottinger over Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard, whoever starting. As much as the Oilers defense is going to help this in this series, and they will help, I just think that the Stars are also just going to be able to get those shots on net. And I think that's ultimately I'll go Stars in 7. It's going to be a great series though. I think it's going to go the distance, and honestly could go either way. It's really a coin toss type of series.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. I'll even just throw in on the goaltending piece, like God willing, there shouldn't be a situation where this would be needed in this series, but God forbid, if anything were to happen to Ottinger during this series, Scott Wedgwood has put up some great performances for Dallas this season. So like he is a really solid backup to have as well. But no, I just think in general, it's going to be a really good series. It's going to be close. Like, to me, I do have to think about it. It's not like, oh, easy. It's going to be Dallas or it's going to be Edmonton. Like, I think if you're a hockey fan and you just enjoy good hockey, like the Final Four that we have here in the East and the West is like the ideal scenario, I think, because you've got like 3 of the top teams in the league and Connor McDavid. And Leon Draisaitl.
And the Oilers really are, you can make the case that they were the best team in the Pacific also. Like, as much as they didn't finish the 1 seed, you can make the case that they were. So it really is like almost a chalk bracket, which is for the first time is a chalk bracket. But yeah, it's been that type of series. So all right, I guess we're running low on time. So Emma, any quick plugs, any articles, or where could we find you, the type of podcasts you do, or anything big coming up that you have to plug here? You want to plug here?
Yeah, I like you mentioned, I cover the Nashville Predators for the Hockey News, so you can find me over there. I also write about the NHL at large for heavy.com, and I actually co-host 3 podcasts currently, which is a lot, but
one.
it's a lot. It's a lot for me to keep track of, honestly, but I host, as you mentioned, the Gold Standard with the 440 Sports Network. It's All Your Fault with the Nashville Scene, and Locked On Predators from Monday through Friday. So you can catch me at all of those places or on Twitter at Emma_Lingan.
I think I forgot It's All Your Fault just because I didn't want to say out loud It's All Your Fault. One of those anyway, but Emma Lingan doing a ton of great stuff for the Nashville Predators and NHL at large. Make sure to check out all the stuff. You can find me at the Hockey Writers at Mike Fink, and on the Tundra Enthusiast News Network. So it looks like we're out of time. Thank you for watching this for our 3rd episode. That's the Adam Pelech and Nick Jensen episode. We also Chris Tanev is now wearing number 3, so we'll throw him as an honorary captain. I might start doing this. The next episode's gonna be fun because it's number 4, but we already know our captain for that. But we're out of time, so thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share the video, and stay tuned for next time when we have another great episode. Thank you.